Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidel. Welcome.
Alan Young from the Star Advertiser.
Okay, there you go. One of my favorite guys, and one of my favorite shows is to talk with Alan. You know, I follow him following, so to speak. Alan does a lot of energy for the Star Advertiser, and we really like to connect once. I like to connect once in a while, and sort of check in with him, a reality test, if you will.
Certainly, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. You know, we're in the middle of a transformation, and and Alan knows about it. So, what I thought originally to talk about, at least for a starter, is we seem to be having the outline is emerging. The outline is emerging, and where you might not have, seen it clearly a couple of years ago, now it seems that PV is everything. PV is taking over, and maybe a microcosm of the world in general. And everybody's finding that PV works, and there's a lot of manufacturers, and it's getting more, efficient, and everybody likes it, and people do not protest in the street about PV.
Nope.
So you have no, political issues. I mean, well, there's some political issues, but about putting it in. Everybody, in fact, that's the problem. Everybody wants to put it in. And then, of course, the grid, gets threatened and saturated and all this. And HECO takes the position that they can't just keep taking it. Have to do sort of a house by house curtail by way of these, interconnect studies, and
depending on where you live and what the level of saturation is in your area.
But it's emerging. It's emerging as the leading.
Those areas are going to be increasing as this exponential growth continues.
Would you agree with me that it will get resolved? It has to get resolved.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're dealing with things they haven't dealt with before, but all the way through history, technological challenges have emerged, and with time and persistence, I'm sure they'll get to the point where it won't be as difficult as it is now.
Yeah, I mean, right now it's a big push by a lot of people who have collectively a lot of clout and make everybody mad at Hawaiian Electric about it. And Hawaiian Electric ultimately will find a way. And we can talk about my solution. I have a solution for this,
You're engineer and you're...
my engineer brain, which is, I'm not an engineer at all. In fact, I never would consider that. But so what if we agree that there has to be a solution, what do you think the solution might be? Because in the end of the day, there's so much momentum and pressure, to fill out this model of PV everywhere.
Right. Well, the solution here might be different than it is, for instance, on the mainland or other places where you have a much larger grid. Because one of the issues is the fact that we are an island, and everything that gets produced by solar panels stays on this island, and it's you can't bring in power from outside the grid as you could if you were in California, where you have a much larger grid to sort of balance out some of the problems that they're dealing with. Here, you're stuck on an island, so to speak, and you got to find solutions that work in this kind of environment.
So, go one step further. Does the solution, I mean, that is likely, to ultimately prevail, to ultimately, resolve the problem, which needs to be resolved, is that going to be storage or a combination of things?
Yeah, I mean, storage can be looked at two ways. I mean, you can look at storage where you have your solar panels working during the day, producing more electricity than some circuits can handle. But if you could put that electricity into a battery or some other storage device, hold it there, and in reserve and use it at night, that would be a solution. But the research that is being done now with batteries is not for long-term storage; it's for short-term fluctuations to balance out peaks and valleys that occur by the second. So the longer term solution to use batteries to store that energy for nighttime use, that's further down the road. And there's other types of technologies. For instance, at Parker Ranch on the Big Island, they're talking about doing a microgrid where the ranch and the nearby town of Waimea could potentially disconnect from the grid, generate their own electricity with renewable sources, and solve the storage problem with something called pumped hydro, where they would...
Because they have a lot of mountains there.
Right, you pump the water uphill, put it in a reservoir. At nighttime, when your solar panels aren't operating, you let that water flow back down, turn a turbine. You know, that's not something that would work on Oahu, though.
Because of the land, the
Yeah.
cost of land and all that.
Right. I mean, you would need the
Lot of land.
elevation difference. You need the reservoirs. But I mean, that's an example of technology that would work in certain cases.
Well, that's really interesting. They would do. You know, they're way ahead. I mean, Kahua Ranch there on the top of the Kohala Mountains. You know, they had a wind farm inside this large mountain, this hollow mountain, kind of an old volcano mountain, back 30 years ago. That was a working wind farm. Lots of. I mean, I went in there on a horseback ride, as it were.
Okay.
I was really surprised to see all these windmills. They're dead now. They're not functioning, as far as I know. But you got to give them credit for being, you know, visionary,
Forward-thinking,
even at that time. So pumped hydro is really an interesting possibility. But you know, the plan you talked about a minute ago at the ranch there, a microgrid that's not connected, but it's still is it a utility? Does it fall within the PUC and all that regulation that is so hard to comply with?
That's a good question, Jay. You know, they would be essentially, well, you know, that's in the very early stages. So they're looking at a bunch of different options, including being connected, staying connected to the Helco grid, and they could be an energy source for the Helco grid. And, you know, whereas with hundreds of homes or thousands of homes each having a solar panel, having your power source come from one entity, Helco could manage that really well. If Parker Ranch wanted to hook into Helco and say, when we have excess power, we can give it to you through one conduit, whereas, you know, 10,000 individual homes, a utility has a hard time monitoring the output of each one of those solar panels and how they can, you know, balance that.
If I were the utility, I'd welcome that.
Yeah.
You know, sort of like minimum point of entry on the telephone thing. You know, inside the box, so to speak, they're not responsible. Doesn't cost them anything to maintain or fix wires or, you know, solve problems. They just get it on one little line. That's it.
Yep.
Same here. That would actually be a benefit for HECO. They wouldn't have so much control inside, but outside, just get it through. That'd be pretty interesting.
Right.
And if it works there, somebody else will want to do it.
Yeah. Well,
you know?
I mean, there's a developer that's looking at Molokai, and he wants to do, or the company wants to do a combination of a solar and pumped hydro. I think Molokai is pretty much written off wind. I don't think they'll, you know, the community there has resisted two different efforts by developers to do wind projects. So the person now that's trying to work with Molokai Ranch is proposing no wind. It's all solar in combination with pumped hydro, which would provide the storage, you know, part of that project, which is, you know, would be at this point cheaper than batteries. Batteries at this stage, even though the prices of batteries, or lithium-ion batteries, is coming down, battery storage is still expensive, prohibitively expensive.
You know, it's so interesting that's happening on Molokai. Because Molokai was sort of dead set against it. Just leave us alone. We'll, you know, don't come around. And it really, you're right. I mean, the group, the activist group there, the opposition, really crushed wind. I mean, they were much more activist than Lanai, and Lanai was pretty activist all by itself.
But in those cases, there was no guarantee that it would bring your rates down. Whereas the new developer, this would be just for Molokai project. They wouldn't be trying to export any of this electricity. So they won't say what their estimates for the reduction in electricity prices is, but some amount of reduction. In Molokai and Lanai pay among the highest in the mid to upper 40 cents per kilowatt hour.
I saw the diesel facility on Lanai once. I've never seen that. I mean, it looks like a railroad car. It's really ugly.
I heard somebody describe it as like if you went to Indonesia in the middle of the jungle and they were going to do gold mining, they would drop in a diesel generator, and that's kind of what they've got over
It
there.
doesn't fit very much with the terrain. But there it is, big, rusted, post-war diesel generator. Been
Burning
working all this time.
Expensive fuel, too.
Expensive fuel, expensive to maintain. It
Hard to
may
get
look,
there.
rusted, but it must cost plenty to keep it going. And so I think the same thing on Molokai. It's just way back when, kind of old diesel. So, what's ironic about it is that the guys on Molokai didn't want to talk to anybody about wind, although Walter Ritty had his own windmill. It was a modest windmill, and he knew about wind. And now they're focused all on PV. Now, there are some retired guys who are in the wind business, and I've talked to some of them, who live, I'm not sure they're retired either, who live on Molokai and consult about these things, and probably the community has made some kind of decision over there that if given their own prerogative, and I think they have their own prerogative more than most places. You have political will anyway. They're going to do PV, okay, and to have not one but 2 PV farms come in and batteries and all this in the last few months, it means that somebody in Molokai is talking to the people who might do it. In the one case, MECO wants to put 3 megawatts storage in there.
Right, that's a project they're doing with Hawaii Natural Energy Institute, UH affiliate there with federal funding, and that's not so much of a storage project but it's something they're doing because they have a lot of blackouts and brownouts on Molokai.
And that's probably because they got so much PV.
Not necessarily. There's just not, it's a small grid and a small generating station. And if one of the diesel units goes down, it represents a big percentage of the load on the grid. So if they have problems with these old diesel generators that we were just talking about, if one of the units were to go down, it's a cascading effect, and then things shut down to protect other things on the grid. So the side effect of that is that if there is a disruption in the flow of electricity and the frequency or the power, all of the inverters on the PV panels automatically shut off. And Molokai has a very high percentage of penetration of PV, so it stems from the old grid that they have there and these old generating stations, not so much that they're overwhelmed with PV.
Got it.
From what I'm told.
Got it. But I mean, it's interesting. It's the juxtaposition of this old equipment and the new equipment with the inverters that require connection all the time. And,
right.
And there you go. And you have brownouts. No place in the state has regular brownouts the way Molokai does. That's tremendous irony going on.
And that project that they're working on, addresses a lot of problems. Not specifically the amount of PV on the island, but a lot of other things, and that's actually going on right now, or is soon to start. So that would precede this other developer's plan to, redo Molokai's electrical system with PV and pump hydro. That's down the road. This other project is going on right now.
The HNEI project.
Yeah, provide immediate relief.
Yeah, well, the thing about it, and we're going to talk about it after the break, but the thing about it is HNEI is right there at the intersection of this whole issue, the issue between having an older grid that can't handle all these, issues created by PV, and, the increase in PV. And HNEI is right there. It's studying it in Molokai. It's studying it elsewhere.
Big Island, they're going to do one on Oahu, a battery project to address the very specific problem of PV saturation. So that each of these 3 battery projects that HNEI is working on with HECO and their affiliates, each one of those projects addresses a separate issue. But yeah, they have the research and development capability. HECO, MECO, HELCO, they're utilities, and they're in the business of providing you power, and some people might say they don't have the expertise or what it takes to try to solve this bigger problem, and which is where HNEI can come in and help do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever is motivating or not motivating HECO, it appears only in the last I don't know, year as far as my observation, that HNEI is bellying up to these difficult issues, doing real research on it, coming up with real, suggestions that will probably have a big effect. But let's take a break for a minute. That's Alan Yonan, the star reporter from the Star Advertiser, Star Advertiser reporter on energy. This is Think Tech Talks. We're talking about Hawaii, the state of energy, and we're trying to get a handle on what is going on here, getting the sea changes in order. We'll be right back after this break.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yeah, no. Oh, okay, that's good. That's fine. Okay, we're back. We're live. This is Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel. We're here talking about the state of energy in Hawaii with Alan Yonan, a reporter who covers energy all day, every day, I think. Well, not all day, but most days. For the Star Advertiser. And you're all over the paper. It's not one section, but primarily business, yeah.
Right, but the business coverage falls, or the energy coverage falls in the business section.
So, talking about how this is all emerging, and I mean, I think it's really positive to know that for the first time in this effort started essentially in 2008, although there were things happened before that, but 2008 got serious. Now we have research going on with Hawaii National Energy Institute, which is really a UH facility. It has been funded by the barrel tax, although there's an issue about that in this year's legislature. And it's got some real smart guys there who do real research. And, since we're at the cutting edge of everything, it's a thing, don't you agree? We're sui generis. This is a special state, special resources and special limitations and special political issues makes us very special. And so we have a situation that's different from most other places. Right. So we have to carve this bird ourselves. We have to figure it out, and for that we need research. We need an organization like HNEI. And I mean, I've sort of come to the conclusion that HNEI is playing and will play a very important role going forward, to deal with what are difficult issues.
Yeah, they get funding from the Department of Energy. They get funding from the Navy. These are all, at the federal level, they want to see these problems solved because they're going to start cropping up in other places, and we're sort of that petri dish where a lot of these things are going to be. We're going to try to figure out some of these issues and how to get past them.
I hope we can make some money with this.
Well, they should, make sure they get a good
patents.
lawyer to get the intellectual property rights to all of these things, and then charge people for them.
I worry about that. In the past, the universities come up with some brilliant ideas. In vitro fertilization comes to mind. It was invented here in Manoa,
right?
And we gave it away. Never made any money at all.
And we did some cloning here, right? Or
the sheep, green sheep.
Yeah.
Never made any money on it. So, I mean, this is an occasion. See, the problem is there's so many people who are watching and funding from foreign sources. I mean, offshore sources that, they're not going to want to see it protected by local organizations.
I mean, the Japanese government, Hitachi, a lot of these big corporate folks are on Maui working with over there on smart grid technology, electric vehicle technology. So they're going to want to take that information back home with them.
Sure, and we can't sell it if they do that. So, I mean, there should be somebody out there in charge of getting intellectual property rights for what we do here, what we learn, whether it's HNEI or some other way.
Get patents on them, and
I mean, and we're going to have somebody later on the show that's being funded by being funded by the Hawaii Accelerator, the Energy Accelerator.
Don Lippert's group.
Yeah, right. And you know, that's the great thing, that we might actually have an energy tech sector here that would invent things. I remember there was one project, it went away, but there was one project called LIDAR, or using LIDAR to see which direction the wind was coming from, using the, what do you call it, laser technology. Okay? And this would have been great for us to patent and protect. I don't think it got that far, but it, you know, it struck me, this is the kind of thing, you know, because I figured at the time that which way the wind is coming from is really important to you know, to size up where the windmill goes.
Right.
And you know, that kind of technology would be useful. But I want to, it flows, out of that flows a question I'll put to you, is where is wind anyway? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, Molokai is out of the picture. Lanai, you know, Castle and Cooke still wants, even though Castle and Cooke sold, you know, the bulk of Lanai to Larry Ellison, they reserved the rights to develop a wind farm there.
According to your story, Chris Lavorne from Castle and Cooke was there last night at the PUC hearing.
Right, and they're keen on, you know, keeping that project alive, even though there's a great deal of opposition there on Lanai. Mm-hmm. There's a developer who wants to put a project in next to the existing First Wind project up in Kahuku. The company, Champlain Wind, they're getting some resistance from the Kahuku community.
Interesting how that's turned. You know, at the time that Kahuku thing went in the first place, everybody was behind it. And now the fire just turned everybody.
The battery fire part of it at the First Wind project, but it's also this, if you look at a map of the town up there, this would basically put wind turbines on 3 sides of Kahuku, and I think, you know, that's, people just feel a little bit claustrophobic by being surrounded by these things.
People are having trouble with wind. They don't have trouble with PV. Everybody likes PV, but they don't.
Aesthetically,
like
yeah.
What about Ulupalakua? They seem to be going gangbusters with wind.
Right. So Maui, you know, First Wind has its Kahiava 1 and 2 above Maalaea, and that's, you know, some of the best wind resources in the world. They're, you know, we talk about capacity factor. That's how much of the actual capacity, you know, the nameplate capacity of the device, the wind turbine, how much energy you actually get out of that. And in Maui, they're getting upwards of 40%, which is extremely good, much better than solar. On the other side, on the Haleakala side, Ulupalakua, they've got their project in. In fact, they have too much wind on Maui, and that's why one of the reasons the state is pushing for this cable, so that at night when there's curtailment, when they have to, you know, dump this excess wind energy that they're not able to use, they could, you know, bring it over to Oahu.
Actually, you know, it's the same thing. Runs a parallel. Although I think we agree that wind doesn't have as many supporters these days as it used to, and not as many supporters, you know, among the community as PV does, largely for aesthetic reasons. That it runs a parallel on the storage solution. If there was a storage solution, then you wouldn't have curtailment, and you wouldn't have you know, interconnect problems with the PV. It's the same thing. So it's all about storage.
Yeah, it seems to be the big bugaboo. You know, that's where we're hitting our limits, is because it's, you know, at a oil-fired or gas-fired or coal-fired power plant, you can crank it up and crank it down to meet the demand. But you know, wind and solar, they're just going all out. When, you know, a sunny day at noon on Honolulu, you've got many circuits that solar energy is providing 100% of the electricity that's being consumed on that circuit. And then, you know, if you start reducing the load, you've got too much PV being produced, and that causes HECO problems.
Seems like such a shame.
Yeah.
You know, you go to all this trouble, and there it is. You've captured Mother Nature. You've got her.
Yeah.
But you can't use it.
Yeah.
We got to do something, Alan.
So yeah, batteries. You know, pumped hydro. You know, there's other things where some sort of more fantastic ideas, like you could put big elastic or bladders under the ocean, fill them up with air, and then allow that air to escape to provide you. I mean, you would use the excess energy to fill it with air, and then use it as you needed. Yeah. So
Okay.
I mean, how many of these ideas are ever going to?
Right.
Those
the flywheel. Remember
the flywheel. There's the flywheel. Or I guess on the mainland, there's some. Underground caverns like in the Southwest where you could fill them full of
with air,
compressed air, and
Yeah. Although the rock in Hawaii, I don't think it lends itself to that sort of thing. It's porous, and you have to find a way to keep the air inside,
right,
without seeping out.
The other thing, Jay, though, is storage is, there needs to be a lot more done there. But even, for instance, the HNEI project that they're doing out in Ewa, they're using batteries, but not so much to store the energy to use it after the sun goes down, to allow the excess, basically to smooth out the voltage and frequency fluctuations that the solar energy is causing. And that kind of research and development hasn't been done. This is one of the first projects to do that, and that is on the distribution side. So all these other big, the big batteries that they do at the wind farms, those batteries are to regulate the outflow from the wind farm as that electricity goes into a main, HECO trunk line. But out in the neighborhoods at the distribution level is where HECO is running into these problems with. People are having to wait until HECO finishes up some studies, or maybe HECO may ask you to put in a new transformer. So the
To
research
keep the level of it acceptable.
right. So that's different than storage. That's more of a a buffering kind of a technology.
But there's also technology that could be done. We could get intellectual property on that. That would be useful around the world to flatten the curve and make it more useful to the community. I'm so excited about this, and I think that somebody up at UH right now is working on a little capacitor about that big, and this is going to have extraordinary, battery effect. And you put them all together, thousands of them, and all of a sudden you get a battery that has never been seen before. Somebody's going to invent that. It's going to make Bill Gates look like a piker. It's going to make Larry Ellison look like a piker. Maybe Larry Ellison's working on it. He can do what he wants.
Well, he has his own plan to redo Lanai's energy system there.
Does that include pumped hydro too?
When he hired a guy from UC San Diego to oversee this project, and UC San Diego's got its own microgrid there that's been written about a lot, and so it isn't 100% energy independent, but it's pretty close to it, and he wants to sort of take those concepts to Lanai, and it's all about being able to integrate all of this stuff and being to use it in a smart way where you're not using a century-old technology. You're using what we have, the most modern, electrical systems to help, use the energy more efficiently. And that's what they won't talk about it yet, but that's what's in the works on Lanai.
I love these conversations. If we stay here long enough, we will figure it out. That's Alan Yonan, the Star reporter for the Star Advertiser on energy, and I'm Jay Fidel, and we're here at a Think Tech Talk. We're having a Think Tech Talk about Hawaii, the state of clean energy. We'll be right back after this short break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
We're back. We're live. We're broadcasting from Pioneer Plaza in the core of downtown Honolulu to the world by way of Ustream and Spreaker and YouTube and you name it. We get out there. We also put this on Olelo too, So there is somebody's listening, telling you, Alan.
Okay.
And we'll listen for a long time. They'll be dated in 6 months, but still. And that's Alan Yonan, and we're having a Think Tech talk about the state of energy in Hawaii. And I'm so delighted to be able to have this conversation. We got to go through the problem of, creating the show just so we can talk, Alan.
Well, we will be overtaken by events, I hope, because the things we're talking about will have been solved when we do this again in 6 months. I hope.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. I'd like to see that. Catch up. So we were talking in the break very briefly about, the black box, the $200 black box that does curtailing house by house. And so, I mean, the ideal, the Cadillac solution is you have nice PV on your roof. You have one of, what's his name, Joe Saturnia's M-Power unit.
M-Power.
Whatever it is.
Okay.
It's a battery system. It's
Right.
a nice battery system.
And more and more PV companies are offering their customers those,
Everybody's doing it now,
Yeah.
for about 15,000, maybe a little more,
depending on
depending on how big your installation. How long you want the batteries to last, really. If you want a week, that's going to be
Yeah.
more than 3 days. Okay, and then the final part of the equipment, the kit, so to speak, is this black box, where the electric company can say, okay, it's enough. We don't need it now, so we're gonna stop you there. We're not gonna take it. It gets grounded. Too bad that anything gets it gets back in your battery, presumably. you know. But in any event, we don't want it, so we can stop it from coming. So therefore, we don't have to have an interconnect study. See,
Right.
we can do this right now.
In fact, the utilities already do that with commercial customers. When you go into, if you're a warehouse or a factory and you put up PV in an area that's overly saturated, often you'll sign something giving the utility the right to shut off your power if they're running into problems. And who knows, maybe that's coming down the road for homeowners, where either you have to wait until all the studies are completed to see if you fit into the profile.
And if you don't, too bad for you, kind
Right.
of thing.
Or you could just say, hey, I mean,
I'll take the black box.
right, because they do that. That's, I think, demand response, because you can get $4 off your electric bill if you give, for instance, Hawaii Electric the authority to shut off your hot water heater. They can do that remotely, and that takes you into smart meters, which gives the utility a lot more information about what's going on at the distribution level, which they don't know, because all these. No, they want.
It's not invasive. It's not like NSA or anything.
No. I mean, there's.
They can know everything about me. It's okay.
Well, there's people on Kauai who don't want the cat.
I know that. I know that. Yeah.
But yeah. So if they have more information, because right now they're blind. All of those PV panels, thousands of them, are putting out. HECO doesn't know what's coming off of those PV panels. If they had that information, they could balance their load a little bit better.
Yeah, they should go down that path.
Well, they tried. PUC shot them down a couple of years ago.
is
It's
that
too
right?
expensive.
That's
Yeah,
really
but
too
they
bad.
said come back and propose it again. And I'm thinking, I'm hoping, or you would assume that HECO's got another plan in the works.
There's got to be. I mean, it's got to get resolved. You can't say, well, A, we do a study, and B, if the study doesn't work out in your favor, you're dead. you never get it. You wait for until kingdom comes. That's not an acceptable solution. So there's got to be technology that comes in here and fixes it. And it seems to me that the black box solution has got to emerge after a while. If it's either the black box or the batteries or both or what.
Right.
And the big question is, when is the battery and the system, going to be the problem of the homeowner, and when is the battery of the system going to be the problem of the utility? I mean, there's this conference going on in March. You going to go on Maui? It's organized by the County of Maui.
Right.
By Doug McLeod. It's the
he's
utility of the future.
Right.
I mean, really, this is really exciting. We should have a conference like that here. Instead, in Maui, they have it in Maui. These are critical issues. What is the utility going to look like?
Right.
You should go.
Well, I'll talk to my bosses about that, Jay. But yeah, whose responsibility is it? I mean, that's with this latest rapid growth of PV and the utility telling some of their customers, even, all throughout the state, that if your circuit has too much, but we'll let you do it if we can study and figure out what needs to be done, and that study may result in some kind of equipment upgrade. And till now, the customer has paid for those upgrades. And on the commercial side, they'll pay tens of thousands of dollars for new transformers and new equipment because it's built into the cost of business. They can amortize it and get their money back. But at this stage, and that's a big, there's differences of opinion as to who's, is it the utility's fault because they have an old grid that now they're going to make the customer pay for these customer-cited upgrades. But then if you were to build that into their rate base, if they were to just absorb that cost, then they would spread that among all of the utility customers with or without, PV. So it's there's some fairness issues there.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to pay for it. You start out with that. Nobody actually wants to pay for it. Nobody says, I'd like to do this for the benefit of the state. I'll absorb that $200 or whatever.
Right. Well, the $200 would be manageable. Your black box idea, I like that. $200. You just have to figure out what you're going to do when they do shut you down, right?
No, it's not a problem. Why? Because with net metering, right, which is only since 2001 or something,
that's right.
you don't send it back. That's all.
Right. You're not producing. You don't
get any credit or money for it.
Yeah.
But
you're still on the grid.
Still on the grid.
Yeah.
If anything happens, you can still draw power. You may pay a little. It's just a matter of dollars and cents. That's all. And it's not a lot of dollars and cents. I don't know why people don't like. They should try that. They should come up with that. And I believe that there is a box like this. It's not just my imagination.
Like we were just saying that at the commercial level, they do it.
So to say the technology is already there.
Yeah.
It makes it smaller.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about in the last part of our show, Alan, which is actually very relevant to the meeting last night where the PUC took input on the undersea cable. I mean, I wanted to get your thoughts about that, about where that's been and where it's going, and maybe you could smell out a little of it at this meeting last night. So that's Alan Yonan, Star reporter for the Star Advertiser on energy. This is Think Tech Talks. I'm Jay Fidel, talking about the state of energy here in Hawaii, because we really like to cover that. And we'll be right back after the short break.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High-Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Horry. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Okay, I'm here with Alan Yonan, a Star reporter from the Star Advertiser. We're talking about energy on Think Tech. Think Tech Talks, the state of energy here in Hawaii. And we're covering some really interesting points. And the last point to talk about is this meeting last night. The PUC is going to have two meetings. One was last night and the other one's next week, I think, in Maui.
Thursday, tomorrow.
Oh, Thursday, this week. Yeah. In Maui, they're going to go to Maui and take public input on about the cable. And this is all part of a docket they announced a few months ago that they want to do a quote investigative docket over
whether it's in the public interest.
Whether it's in the public interest over undersea cable, and they separated that from another investigative docket over Lanai. What's left of Lanai? That's really interesting. You wonder why. Anyway. So here we are, and we're facing it, and they're taking it up, and they're having public input, and ultimately they'll make a decision. But in the way of background, my recollection, okay, the thing was part of the 2008 Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. And it was in some detail. In fact, I would say it was a big part of the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative. And it sort of rattled and rolled and bounced from one side of the box to the other, and nothing much happened. Then the university was hired by DBED to do $1.5 million worth of undersea examination with their ship. And it was concerned about the whales, and the environmental organizations had some reluctance about it because of that. And it seemed to be slowing down. Then there was this bill in 2011 or 12, right, that sort of reinvigorated it.
Right, that was the bill that would authorize a financing structure that would help raise the capital that would be needed to build this. So they needed to have that in place in order for the developers to start getting interested in doing this program.
Right, and the interesting point about what you just said is the developers had backed off. They had been originally contacted in 2008, and they were ready because they know how to do this all over the world. They can do cables, no big deal. But they saw that there was really not a consensus of what to do, so they backed off. This bill was a way to get them back in, get the financing and so forth. I'm not sure it breathed that much life into it, but at least it led to this investigative docket that we have right now. And I think it'll fall on, some people will want the state to be unified on the grid. I'm guessing that the Hawaiian Electric will want that, I'm guessing. Other people, probably in the environmental camp, don't want to do it. Other people are concerned about it's going to raise rates,
In the short term, yeah.
What did you hear last night at this meeting?
Well, DBED's position is that over the life of the project, which I believe is 30 years, 30 years.
That sounds right.
Let's say 30 years, that the ability to integrate the two grids, at least Maui and Oahu, the ability to bring over some of the excess wind energy that's being curtailed, just by enlarging the grid with a two-way grid tie would, save over 30 years, save about $420 some odd million. I mean, the cable itself would cost, I think they're estimating $700 million. The net savings, most of that would be coming from, reduction of fuel costs. There would be a net savings over the long term, but sure, in the short term, there's going to be some expense to build this thing.
Was there? What was your sense of the group? I mean, were they in favor, against? Were they all fragmented? As I would expect, fragmented myself, but
yeah. There weren't that many people that testified. I counted 8 people, and Life of the Land, which has opposed this, got up and said they didn't think it was a good idea. DBED was obviously, they're the main supporter of this. They're the one who commissioned a consultant study that was submitted as part of this PUC docket showing these savings and under various scenarios. And Castle and Cook, the Lanai developer that wants to do the Lanai project, got up and said they would be in favor of it as long as it would include them. Because right now it's just
can't argue with that. I mean,
it's strictly Oahu to Maui, no Lanai in this investigative proceeding. So, but yeah, there wasn't. I mean, I'm assuming that when they get to Maui, some of the folks from Lanai will go and they'll be against it, I would think, because anything that comes, this cable would go right by them, and they're pretty much united against undersea cables. And so, yeah, you might probably, I would imagine you'd see more.
I remember Robin Kay once, I mean, not to say that what he said at one moment is what he will say at another moment, but what he did say was, it was in that TV show that was, remember that really watershed TV show on PBS about the cable, about wind and all that.
Yeah.
He said if it doesn't touch Lanai, it's okay with me.
Okay.
Just leave me alone. I don't want it here. I don't want the windmills here. It'll disrupt my island. So I mean, it would seem to me that if they have prevailed, maybe they have, in stopping it on Lanai, they shouldn't oppose it. But there was somebody in your article, there was somebody from Molokai there who opposed it because, as a conceptual matter, they would oppose any cable, wherever it went.
Right, because it would, in their eyes, if it's running right past Molokai, it wouldn't be that hard to just do a little spur connect Molokai to this
Wow.
cable, and then Molokai's back in the picture. Although
not
there
that
is no
easy.
indication that Molokai, that Molokai Ranch, the big landowner, it seems like they're pretty much done with potential cable projects or wind projects.
But here, now that we have 2 minutes left, I wanted to ask you my operative question about this. Has there been talk about what I consider, the critical element of the cable, and that is redundancy? We are developing this model with, the outlines are showing now. We got PV everywhere, distributed everywhere, and hopefully storage and curtailment devices that don't offend people everywhere, island by island. Here, now come along the cable. Well, the cable's always been with us, really, but now the cable comes up, and here we're faced with policy issues about the cable. Wouldn't we benefit by having a cable in there in terms of, of a redundant system where for any reason, if the panels failed or climate change changed the weather in such a way so that wind and panels weren't so good anymore, and we had to find some other way to feed the islands, wouldn't this be helpful? It could save our bacon in bad situation.
Well, that's the state's view, the governor's view, DBED's view, but there's the other school of thought that we should be getting away from that model into a more distributed model where you're not that everybody sort of takes care of their own energy needs locally as you can, and that way, if there is a problem with a major transmission line, well, it's not your problem because you've created your own.
Yeah.
For instance, your microgrid.
To frame it another way, am I my brother's keeper?
Yeah. Yeah. If there was no cost involved and no environmental impact involved, why not do it? But you got to weigh having this redundancy, which is arguably a good thing, against the cost and those other factors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, this is it's heading to this issue.
Right.
That's because it's not really clear with all the considerations, and the tipping question, if you will, is or could likely be the benefit of redundancy. And at the end of the day, this is probably a question of technology. And I'd like to hear from technology guys to tell me whether, as a matter of good planning, contingency planning, with due regard for climate change, whether a redundant system is worth the extra money.
Right.
It isn't only $700 million. There's other things too that would have to be built.
Right. Right. That's why the report that DBED commissioned to submit to the PUC supporting the cable, of course, hit all the positives and how that the costs would outweigh, or the benefits would outweigh the costs, and over the long term, it would be a good investment.
You know what I worry about, though? Even if you and I agree, which we haven't really gotten that far, but that it was a good idea. The cable's a good idea. The process steps from here to turning on the switch are completely amorphous, how long that would take.
Yeah, I mean...
And we only know it would take a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And technology changes. You keep waiting for the next best computer to come along, and you can be waiting forever, right?
Yeah, all of a sudden you don't need one anymore.
Yeah.
They planted it in your brain.
Right.
They don't need computers.
We're doing the electricity microwave. There's no cable.
Alan, thank you so much for coming down. It's great to talk to you. Yeah, we're about out of time.
We're out of time. Jeez,
Yeah, I like that. It goes fast.
Man, I wish my day at work went this quickly.
Well, when you're having fun, Alan Yoden, the Star reporter at the Star Advertiser, doing energy. This is Think Tech Talks. We're talking about Hawaii, the state of energy, and we'll be back in 6 months, maybe.
All right.
To take stock again and find the sea changes in energy in Hawaii. Thank you, Alan.
Sure.
Aloha.
Welcome, Jay.